Kia ora whānau. We are coming up with a very exciting program today with the partnership of police, and to make this a bit of kind of awareness program with a few topics that maybe you have a question around, or maybe thought about it but you didn't have an answer, or maybe you had an answer but now we're here with those beautiful people that will come to the show and hear their experience and their answers to some of our questions we have together. So stay with us and enjoy this journey of this program. Great. So first episodes, I have amazing guest and a friend and a leader in our community is Phil. Phil, how are you today, first?
Good, Codrian. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure and honour.
Great. Thank you so much. So Phil, this is an exciting program we're starting together, and I really want to acknowledge you and thank you for making this happen with this partnership to open with other colleagues that it will come in the later programs to different topics. So first, I want to ask you about this. How exciting you are, and also how amazing that you make this kind of programs to work. Why you have helped us. If I put it this way.
I mean, to be honest, I'd actually want to acknowledge you and voiceofaroha. I think you reached out initially. We had a really good, I think, session, the first session we had, where you had me talking about police and the roles and functions. I think it's good to collaborate with our community partners, and what we're realising and learning is that there are different mediums and platforms we can utilise to reach a larger audience, especially our more silent communities who may not have a voice. And I think with your platform, you certainly give them a voice. And, sometimes podcasts are a new thing for a lot of the older generation, but they certainly, in my experience, work for the younger generation. So if we can reach our younger generations or our minority communities through this medium, we're very happy to be here, and I think it's good. It's a positive move.
Absolutely. So thank you again. So let's kick off the program, and the first episodes we have is today. It's who are the police, right? So before I ask you that and a few questions about who are the police and etc., I want you to how you will introduce yourself to our people.
I'll start off in my mother tongue, if that's all right.
Yep, absolutely.
Shalom alaikum. أنا شمي فيليب. هاي بسيم رابع كودريان هو برصد قد ماسن بصوثن عموخن was role and function of police أخي New Zealander. So basically I said kia ora, and thank you Codrian for having me here today for this opportunity to talk about the role and functions of police. So that's my quick introduction.
That's also great. Thank you, and kia ora and shlama. Awesome. So let's start with a few questions. These questions usually come to the mind. Any young person or people who are watching say, what exactly police do, right? So my first question will be to you, it's what's the rule and the functions of police?
So if we look at it from a sort of a strategic point of view, so overarching, we're essentially here to prevent harm and trauma and to keep New Zealanders safe. So that is our core essence. I mean, we've got our little one-page business, which I can, share with you.
Absolutely.
But our vision, because I want to do it correctly, is to be the safest country in the world. Our purpose is to ensure everybody can be safe and feel safe. So that's our vision and our purpose. And our mission is to prevent crime and harm through exceptional policing. So obviously with that overarching sort of paradigm, if you like, we obviously have roles and functions that we need to complete in order to reach the vision and the mission. So a lot of those are, our core functions are keeping the peace. It is to maintain the public safety. Law enforcement, obviously. I mean, a lot of people see the law enforcement side because when you watch TV shows or you watch the media, you see the police, chasing somebody or in their red and blue lights in their vehicle. That is just one part of policing. Crime prevention is a big part. That's all the stuff that we don't see in the background. So that's how do we know where crime is happening, where it's happening, when it's happening, and who it's happening to. So in order to be, prevention-minded, we need to be intelligence-driven. So intelligence-driven means we go to the right places at the right times and serve the right people in the situation in order to prevent crime and victimisation. Because what you'll find in our stats is there's a disproportionate amount of people who find themselves as victims over and over, and similarly a disproportionate of people who find themselves as, let's not say offenders, but the perpetrators of harm towards others. And so intelligence lead means we deploy our resource to beat demand. The next one is community support and reassurance. So this is part of what I'm doing, supporting our communities. Who are our communities? What are their aspirations? What are their challenges? Where do they want to be? What are their fears? Because not every community has the same aspirations and the same fears. So we've got to be mindful of who our communities are. Yeah. And obviously as we grow, we diversify. So we as an organisation need to reflect that diversity by having what? People who speak the languages, people who profess similar or the same faiths, and people who can understand the cultures that we serve. National security, obviously that's a big thing in modern times. Policing activities outside New Zealand, so we obviously are an international partner, ensuring safety abroad. So in the Pacific Islands, we have a big role to play in terms of maintaining peace and order, but also training other police forces around the Oceania and the Pacific. And lastly, emergency management. So that's when we come together with other partner agencies, such as REMO, civil defence, fire, councils, etc., when there is a significant emergency situation, such as a massive flood or a massive earthquake. We need to be able to link in with our partner agencies to work together to ensure Kiwis are safe.
Beautiful. So I think that is just a great summary how the function of departments, and you may be aware in some countries we have a police for traffic. Do we have something like that here, or actually the police, they will do the job of, let's say, traffic offensive, etc., or any crimes at that? How does that work in the traffic there?
So it used to be separate. So we used to have the MOT, Ministry of Transport, I believe. It was beyond my time. Yeah. And we used to have police, as in us in this uniform, doing everything outside of road policing. I think it was a fiscal movement that happened under one of the governments. I can't remember which year it was. It would have been in the 80s. Don't quote me on this. Yeah. Where they merged what was the road policing department, which was separate, with what was police then. And now, as one entity, the New Zealand Police, we look after safety on the roads. So that is our road policing arm of police. So as you say, they're the ones who look after our highways, our public roads, our streets, and ensure that, we minimise crime and victimisation, whether it's drink driving, speeding, not following the rules, distracted drivers, people on cell phones, all of that sort of safety campaigns. Our road policing groups look after policing, but again, it all comes under the New Zealand Police.
Yeah, awesome, nice. Okay, my other question will be like, how and when should someone call police?
I mean, there's a whole myriad of reasons why people should call police. I mean, the typical answer is, emergency situation. So, God forbid, somebody is dying or somebody is hurting someone is violent, somebody with a weapon. Obviously, those are emergency situations, and we highly recommend people call 111 and just advise the location of where it's happening, what's happening, and if they can, descriptions of who's involved. The more subtle things, that what we classify as non-emergencies. So it could be something like you're seeing a suspicious activity by someone in your neighbourhood who may be looking into properties. I mean, a criminal activity may not be happening now, but that is worthy of a call, and it doesn't have to be 111. It can be a 105. 105 is a non-emergency number, so 105. Those are for either an incident that doesn't meet the criminal threshold. So it's, like I said, that example of someone who just seems out of place, a little bit lost, or maybe doing something suspicious. Or actually there could be a crime that has happened, but there is no urgency. It's not time critical. So for example, I walk past the car and I notice somebody's broken into the car, the windows are broken. Clearly, potentially a crime has occurred, but I don't know when it happened. There's no one in sight. It could have happened an hour ago, it could have happened 10 hours ago. So that would be something has happened, but it's not critical. Versus, for example, I see somebody breaking into a car. That's happening now. That's what we call time critical. therefore that would probably be 111. So yeah, so anytime you feel unsafe, anytime somebody else is feeling unsafe, you can call on behalf of someone else. Just give us a call. If in doubt, give us a call, and our comms operators or the person who receives the call will put you in will give you the right advice in terms of where that call will go. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's awesome. So I think the police will be the one to go. Any critical situations to directly call the police, or some people do try to react directly or stuff. How we will manage the situation? Let's say if a situation have happened, but then I call you after that, will still be called that critical? After the situations?
It depends on the nature of what's going on. I guess we can all agree that we still contact police.
Yeah.
Now, if you're talking about the police response, if police will turn up then and there, now that will be depending on the nature of what's happened, the severity, and the impact that it's had. So there is, and don't quote me on this because I don't work in the comms department, but they definitely have a triage system where they will receive all the information and they will make a determination whether this warrants frontline police attending here and now. If it doesn't warrant police attending here and now, it will definitely still be put into our system whereby police can attend at a later stage when they are free. This could be our local community police. So if it's a local community issue, let's say there's a person who keeps tagging in the areas and it's a young person and it doesn't warrant police attending in operational gear and arresting that young person, because operational police are on the go, so they just go into critical incidences. This could be something where we know who it is, we know where it's happening, and then, you know, that job will be filed away for our local community cops who know the area, they know their communities, and they can take the appropriate action to, I guess, address that lower level offending versus our frontline cops. So what we've got to bear in mind is, I always say that we have this much demand, but we can only critically respond to this much. So we have to be very, very mindful of what jobs we go to and why. We are publicly funded, so obviously the taxpayer deserves to know that we are going to the most important jobs first and foremost, and we have a triage system that puts the priority jobs here and then slowly but surely all the other jobs. So it doesn't mean you don't call, you still call.
Absolutely.
But I just encourage our communities not to be disheartened if police can't attend at that particular time, because, you know, it may be important to you and we recognise that, but the fact that, I don't know, let me use an example, the fact that
pressure and other incidents could be happening same
I mean,
time.
you may call because, I don't know, somebody across the road yelled a swear word to someone else and then they left. The fact that we didn't turn up doesn't mean we don't care. It's probably because somebody else is being stabbed or a pregnant lady's being hit or there's family harm happening. So always be assured that we're busy with other critical incidences, and sometimes we have to weigh up which one do we go to.
Great. I think you just great how you explain it, Beth. And there's, like you said, there's two numbers there, 111 and then it was 105 to the other incidents where you can call, but your request will be filed and will be dealt with, but maybe the response, it could take a little bit, it depends on the urgency or priority of other things happening in the country, and we have a low number of police concerns of the population, right? Do you agree on that? Okay. Yeah. I do have another few questions for this particular episode. It's about you, Phil. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey about why you joined the police? What's your why here?
It's evolved over time, but I think if I go back to the grassroots, look, I never thought of joining police when I was a young person. Through high school, if you'd asked me this question, I thought it was probably a ridiculous question if I was going to join the police. So obviously I arrived here as a young refugee. English was not my first language. Assyrian was my first language. I only learned English at school. It wasn't easy, bridging the gap in terms of learning the local culture, but also English. We grew up, I would say, in a lower socio-economically deprived suburb, and we grew up in council flats. I'm lucky I had good parents, though we didn't have much in the way of money. I mean, I remember growing up as a kid, we'd be lucky if we went to McDonald's, once or twice a year. All my friends were going here and there, and even, when it came to subscriptions for sports, whereas cricket gear, which was expensive, my parents couldn't afford it. So we unfortunately couldn't make ends meet with a lot of sporting requirements or even uniform. We'd have hand-me-downs. My brother's uniform would go to my second brother, and I was the youngest of three boys. I'd just hand-me-downs, and it wasn't an easy upbringing at the time. Because I grew up in that environment, there was a perception that police weren't there for us. I remember a lot of my friends through rugby, Pacific Island boys, very tough, strong boys, and very friendly. And, there was a perception amongst us that police, there were notions that they were prejudiced towards people of colour. And me not exactly being Pākehā, I sort of subscribed to that. And there were some legitimate reasons for that. We're not going to deny that, police have come a long way. I mean, this would have been in the 90s to the very early 2000s, where maybe policing practices weren't up to par with the diversity with which we had even then. So, my recollection of police was, arrests of next door neighbours who were partying and drunk and, what we call today resisting police. And so I'd see it from that narrative. It wasn't until I was at university, Victoria University, and then I was working at a youth service trying to help some at risk, if we can say, youth who are marginalised and really had nothing going for them. So we started a youth mentoring fitness program where we got a lot of young people who again grew up in very deprived homes, economically and otherwise, and alcohol was a commonplace. These kids were 15, 16, 17, 18, drug use, and just generally getting into trouble, whether it was fighting or just doing petty things. So we started a fitness project that involved a bit of kickboxing, involved a bit of circuit training, and in the midst of that, we found out that a lot of them were getting in trouble because they were driving without a license. I mean, they're capable drivers, a lot of them, but they just didn't have the means or the know-how to get a license. So I remember this was where we got in touch with the local community police officer. I still remember his name. His name was Constable Matt Boyce. He was on Cuba Street. There was a station, a little community station on Cuba Street. Connected with him. He was lovely. He came along, gave us the curriculum, helped us get these young men a license, a driver's license, at least the learners, and then some of them got on to a restrictive. And in that partnership that we built, I got to know him, and it was my first time actually making friends with a police officer. And so a lot of the preconceived notions I had, I think kind of started to melt away, because I saw the passion he had working in the community sector, what I'm doing now, is what I love. And it sort of just rejigged my whole ethos on who the police are and what they do. And then he saw what I was doing. I was at uni, obviously I was part of the fitness sort of project, so he saw a bit of ability in me and saw promise and asked me, have you thought of joining the police? And I said, I never have. I was probably 19, 20 at this stage. And then he gave me a booklet, and I've still got it. It was an old school booklet of, what it takes to be a police officer, what a police officer's job is like. And the more I read it, the more I thought, this is me, because it combines, the physical element, but also the intelligence factor of knowing people, knowing the community, knowing all this and like that. And I always said to myself, I couldn't do a labour and teams job, just labour and teams, and I couldn't just sit behind an office all day. I need the power of both, using my mind, but also using my body. And I think this was a good sort of, I guess, a nice balancing of the two, and the rest is history. And I put my name in the hat, went through the application process, and it was basically for me an extension of the work we're already doing, which was advocating for some of our young people. Working in a youth service, we had to advocate a lot in terms of some of the stuff that we're going through, and this cop made it very clear that joining the police isn't just a front line, or you're going to bust doors down or investigate people. No, there is a clear pathway into youth aid, which is a youth services team, community policing, which is what I'm in, and Māori Pacific Ethnic Services. So that was always my dream, and I thank the Lord that the pathway was consistent, and I ended up doing what I love, which is still serving my community, winning trust and confidence despite the uniform. I think it was hard actually telling my parents that I'm joining the police, because they had all sorts of perceptions of what it means joining the police. But Yeah. As we say in Arabic, or in Assyrian, Shkira Shumat Allah, praise be to God. It went smoothly and the community understood.
Awesome. What a beautiful journey, and what a amazing, like, we are proud of you, Phil. Thank you for all the what you're doing there, and it's just been great. We see how we see many communities, all in general, but as well as the communities specific. You're just doing great and proud, and thank you for this, sharing with us this beautiful journey and how it's possible, how the things that you enjoy doing and the things you're passionate about, advocating for, and then you met this only person, and you get the pathway there. So that's why, so now from the journey, I want to check for my last question for this episode specifically here. It's what support is there for the multi-community, the multicultural communities? Like when I ask the question, do you guys have employee support in debate, or how to deal with the different cultures? Do you have this kind of diplomacy and relation?
So that's a good question, and a very fair question. So I work for the Māori Pacific Ethnic Services. As you know, my role is ethnic senior leadership. Oh, I've forgotten my role. Let's just say ethnic liaison officer. That's easier. But yeah, so my role is ethnic liaison officer. So we have a big focus on what does diversity and inclusion mean. Two ways. One is people who want to join police. So how do we look after our own? There's one thing to look after the community, but if people have put their hand up from the diverse communities, but they have no place in police. So we've got to look after our own, and that doesn't just mean recruiting ethnicity and diversity into police, but actually what do we do with our diverse police officers? What is their pathway into moving up into decision-making roles? Because it's very important. There's one thing to hit them in, but actually, how do we mentor them? We want them to become sergeant, senior sergeant, decision makers. Be at that, at those seats and at that table that makes decisions that impact our community. So number one, looking after our own. And number two, when we serve our communities, cultural competency is a must. Admittedly, I don't think we're there yet, but in the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, we've made some really good progress. So it starts from our application process. So when we recruit, we get obviously a lot of applicants, and not everybody gets through. And even if they pass the physical test and the psychometrics test, one of the key things we look for is, what is your cultural competency, or what have you done for the community? What service have you provided? How have you helped any community? Diversity of thought, but also diversity of culture. And so it starts right from recruiting the right people, right? Who have that cultural nous to understand, and to relate, to be able to be personal, not just transactional. Then when they go to police college, we do have dedicated time and recruits to understand the Māori Pacific ethnic spaces. So they literally stay in Marae, I think for a couple of nights. They get introduced to the local iwi, and then we have a Pacific side where we introduce them to the Pacific strategy, and then we have an ethnic side where they get introduced to the ethnic strategy, which we have in the police. And in the ethnic side, which I can talk to, we deliver a few sessions, lecture type sessions and role plays in terms of we can't obviously cover all our diverse communities, and we have, I think, over 200 in New Zealand. So we cover our major faiths, so 6 major faiths, and our major cultures in terms of what is the etiquette, what is the tikanga when dealing with or responding to the communities, what are some of the appropriate things, what are things to consider. Now that isn't the be-all and end-all. Then when they go to district, so whatever district, whether they come to Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch, wherever it may be, they get ongoing cultural competency training that is usually run either by the prevention teams or our teams, the Māori Pacific Ethnic Services, which we have all over the country. And this can come in many different formats. So that is in terms of policing, our police, so that they are culturally competent. Now in terms of the community when they call, yes, you're right. So if somebody calls and they can't speak English, our comms department, which is the people who field the calls, they do have I think it's the 15, don't quote me on this, but it's about 15 major languages. Whether it's, Spanish, Arabic, Cantonese, Mandarin, Hindi, Gujarati, all the major languages, which usually address, I'd say, most of the calls that are diverse in language. But then obviously you'll get specific languages that it may not fall into that category, like you might get, Assyrian, for example, which is part of Iran. Assyrian is a very unique language. Or you might get in Myanmar, you might get a different, Karen as a language, for example, it's very specific. So you get those very specific dialects. Now, what we try and do there is we have a database of all the police who can speak what language. We'll go directly to police because we have so much diversity. Usually that can tackle that. If not, then we rely on some of our organisational partners, our NGOs, and our community leaders. So sometimes I've got calls where officers on site at a job, they have the option of calling interpreting services, which can do interpreting on the phone, and if required, they can even come in person. Failing of that, usually that addresses most of the language barriers. Failing that, then they have contacted me and said, Phil, look, we've got this person, we can't find interpreters this language, who do you know? And I'll either go through my database of police contacts, as in police officers, or we have capable members of the community who work alongside us who can help.
Sounds great. Awesome.
So it's complex, but at the end of the day, it's about making it functional. But look, I do agree that there's still a long way to go, and I think we're making strides.
Yeah, no, it's just good that people listening that, hey, no matter what language, just make that call to be support correctly in a way. And if the language is a barrier, that's where you explain there will be people, agency service that can help out to understand the needs and give the response there.
Because I mean, one advice I'd give is if there's an emergency situation and you've got to call 111, please call 111, even if you can't speak English. Just know where you are. If you can tell us where you are, and we can also try and trace the call. We can't rely fully on the GPS on your phone because to date, from what I know, it could be a lot more efficient now. But from when I was on frontline, it sort of gave you some coordinates, and those coordinates could be within a range of 50 metres or 500 metres. So while we utilise that in terms of where is your phone signaling to you, if in doubt, I'd encourage our communities to call 111 in an emergency situation, just say no English, and then say the language. So no English, Arabic, or no English, Punjabi. Just say the language. But more importantly, say the location. Either it's your address, if that's your attack name. If it's somewhere public, say the street. If you don't know the street, then if there's a sign like McDonald's or, McDonald's, I don't know, Cuba Street.
Yes.
Or Countdown in Newtown. Just give us something and police will get to the location and we can sort out the rest later. If it's an emergency situation, because we want to be there.
Yeah.
To ensure that there is no violence and everybody is safe, and then the rest we can sort out in terms of language interpreters. Please, if you're in harm's way or somebody else's, just give us a call and we'll do whatever we can to ensure that you're safe.
Amazing. And with that advice, we finish this episode. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and for this story.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you.